So what are the signs that you are spiritually awakened, that you've actually had your awakening? A lot of people tend to get in their heads about this particular topic, but it's actually quite simple. Hello, my name is Zimmaron, and thank you so much for consuming this content, for being here, for listening to me. And I'm so grateful and I'm so blessed to have you here. As you may or may not know, my job is to teach you how to become all that you possibly can be in the quickest, simplest, and fastest way possible, which is by going within and interacting with your superconscious self, your higher self, the quantum field, your God self. So, what are the signs that you're spiritually awakened? Now, the bottom line is, if you're already asking this question, chances are you've already awakened spiritually, okay? It's really as simple as that. If you're already asking this question, you're awakened, right? A lot of people think that there's going to be some magical thing that happens and that means that you're spiritually awakened. And for some people that might be the case. For me, it was. Like, I had a profound experience. The moment that I consider myself to be truly spiritually awakened, even though I had a lot of the spiritual concepts already in my mind and in my life, my true awakening, as far as I am concerned, for me, was when I was lying in bed and I was going through a really, really rough patch. And I was listening to 9 Inch Nails, and I had come home from, I think it may have been high school at the time, and I had chronic fatigue. I had a lot of problems in my life, in my childhood. I had a lot of health issues. I had a lot of difficulties. I had multiple surgeries. I was an extreme introvert. I really, really had a difficult time integrating into the world in general. I was very overly sensitive as well. And I would just recoil and avoid everything and anything in life. And that's always been a somewhat of a challenge for me, even though on these videos I come across as like, wow, it's always been a challenge, and having lived in an ashram for near on 20 plus years and having run a lot of the events and produced pilgrimages all over the world and done all this crazy stuff, even to this day, sometimes I think like, how the heck did I do all that? And it was just inspiration, right? It's just, you do what you need to do, one would hope. But I just did what I needed to do, and I didn't care about what other people thought. And anyway, I'm lying in bed on an afternoon after school, and I'm listening to 9 Inch Nails, and I start having a panic attack, and this fear just starts overwhelming me inside. This panic just starts coming out of nowhere. And at the time, you have to understand that I was very much into conspiracy theories, a lot of negative stuff. A lot of the stuff that's being talked about now was talked about 30 to 40 years ago. None of it's changed. It's all the same narratives, the same stuff. The only difference is, with what's happening in the world, it's now undeniable that there are moves being made in order to implement certain mechanisms of control on this planet and to usurp and limit and restrict human rights more and more and more. But this video is not about that. So I'm having this panic attack because I got to this place of where I felt hopeless. I felt like there is nothing I can do. I'm doomed. Like, what's the point of even living and existing? The powers that be have control over me, and they're doing, a lot of harm and a lot of craziness and all of that. And I'm just a small little human being, and there's no hope for me. And I may as well just sort of give up. And there was an element of almost, I wouldn't say suicidal thoughts, because I never seriously considered it at that point. Later on in my life, I did consider suicide. But it was real enough that I started having this panic attack on this one particular day. And I've got 9-inch nails playing, and as the fear came up in me and amplified in me, what happened is it hit this crescendo inside of me, and it overwhelmed me. All of a sudden, this white light enveloped my whole entire body, and I lost all sensation of my body in a flash. And I had this experience of being one with everything in all of creation, like a physical experience of it. I was physically one with all of creation. And then all of a sudden, that fear just disappeared, right, in that flash. And I realized that fear is an illusion. Completely an illusion. Why? Not because the emotion of fear doesn't feel real and therefore need to be dealt with accordingly, but because it's completely self-manufactured. And the interesting thing about fear is that different people have different levels of fear depending on what the circumstance or situation is in their lives and what actually triggers fear, which again shows that fear in and of itself is a conditioning and it's a programming. It's not a reality. And that fear is generated by you, your belief systems and how you hold yourself, and all of the conditioning and programming, the abuse, the trauma, everything else that you have experienced and that you took on. So when I realized that, all of a sudden, I realized that nothing outside of self has any power over me. That I am basically God, that I'm one with all of creation. And so nothing has power over me, and neither do any of those external forces. And it's a choice. It's a choice for me to allow that to be the case at the end of the day. And that was my spiritual awakening. And from that moment forward, I fairly much left the whole conspiracy theory world behind. I had all sorts of recordings and videos, and I was collecting tapes and all sorts of stuff back then, VHS. And the reason why I dumped it all was not because I stopped acknowledging the fact that maybe some of those conspiracy theories are true, and that there is a lot of manipulation of reality for personal gain, and people lie and cheat and steal and all of that sort of stuff, right? I mean, that's just natural. We know that that's what happens. But why focus on it? There was no benefit for me to put any more energy or any of my energy and give it my energy. You see, that's what people don't understand, that when you're focused on all this negative stuff that's happening in the world, you're actually giving it your energy. And then you wonder why you're drained, why you're tired, and it indirectly has power over you because of that. Even with the best of intentions, because where your focus goes, energy flows. And so I just intrinsically, when I realized that and let go of the fear to whatever degree it was, because obviously I still had fear and I had to go through many life lessons after that for decades and still do. But that was like the keystone in the dam for me of where I went from being a fear-based conspiracy theorist with this negative outlook on the world and on life and on this planet and the powers that be and all of that, to being this passionate, excited individual that was just like, holy moly, there's a whole world out there that I need to explore and to discover more of who I truly am and who I was born to be, and to foster that inside of myself. And so what did I do? I started going to meditation groups. I started going to spiritual groups and channeling groups. And I had brushes with dark forces, with some really dark experiences at some of these groups, channeling entities that were not of the light or love. And even though people there seemed to think so, which I don't understand why, but I guess I was more sensitive. And I was now what I consider to be truly spiritually awakened. You see, a lot of people think that just because you believe in the spiritual concepts, that intellectually, that we're all one and we're this and that is indicative of being truly spiritual awakened. But there has to be a certain level of realization inside of self. That only can happen inside of yourself. And even though I knew about spiritual concepts before that, I had an intellectual understanding that, we're all one, we're all interconnected. There was still an overwhelming amount of fear that was still controlling me and influencing me and inhibiting me from being able to be free of that enough to drop the illusion and start putting my energy into working on myself and to focusing on things that would uplift me and help me become more of who I truly am and who I was born to be. And it's as simple as that. So the way that I define spiritual awakening is that moment when one transitions from allowing fear to be controlling them. And I'm not saying 100%, but where there's a certain amount of fear that's controlling you and you're buying into the negativity and you're more negative in nature and buying into the illusion, and the majority of your energy is still going into the physical realm, versus where the majority of your energy is now going into more productive, uplifting pursuits that are helping you to progress in a spiritual way. And you're starting to experience and maybe have more of a visceral understanding and the experiences of the oneness, right? And that you're interconnected with the world and with everything on the world and beyond, because this world is a fraction of infinity, and your life is even more of a fraction of that. So it's a really interesting topic. What is one's spiritual awakening, and how does one know if they're spiritually awakened? But it's simple. Focus on working on yourself. Focus on going within. Focus on removing all the non-love that's inside of you. All the trauma, all the abuse, all the conditions, all the programming, all the limitations, and all the things that are holding you back. And the way that you know when you're doing the real work is that your outer reality will reflect it more and more. You won't be creating those really bad relationships anymore, or less and less. You'll find that there'll be more synchronicities and blessings in your life that will just happen on their own with little to no effort. You will realize that you're gliding through life rather than having to grind it all out and make things happen and push and force and all of that. You'll find that, things will just start happening, and you'll be able to be in more of a peaceful place around all the madness that will still happen in your realm, because we live on this physical planet, right? So things are going to happen, and you're still going to be initiated. You're still going to be learning lessons. And a lot of people have this misperception that by being on the spiritual path that you're going to get to this point where everything's just all lovey-dovey and nothing will ever happen to you, and it's sort of like we are the world skipping in the poppy fields type situation. And the truth is that that's a lie. What happens is you attain self-mastery, true self-mastery, from the inside out. And what will happen is that no matter what happens to you in this physical world, or what happens around you in the physical world, you will stay in total unconditional love and peace. Now, you'll have moments of anger, frustration, hurt, and things like that, because you constantly evolve. See, this is the other misconception, that there's some final destination. There is no final destination. You're infinite. You're infinite. The universe is infinite. God is infinite. So there's an infinite amount of love to grow into. There's an infinite amount of God to grow into. There's an infinite amount of experiences to be had. So you're always going to be growing. You're always going to be expanding. The difference is that when you truly attain self-mastery or enlightenment, or whatever the different terminologies are that you want to utilize for that, and I'm telling you now that there's far fewer people that have attained that level of consciousness than what is presented out in the world. Okay, because a lot of people mistake big spiritual experiences to being their enlightenment, or when they attained self-mastery. And some people are just, quite frankly, self-delusional. They've just shut down certain faculties in themselves that have convinced them that they've actually attained something and that they are masters. But that's a whole separate subject that's very controversial, and people are not going to like me for saying that, but it's just the truth, ultimately. The point is, it sort of doesn't matter. Anyone that thinks that they've arrived to any destination is already self-delusional, because there's no such thing, like I said. No such thing. Infinite possibilities, infinite amount of growth, infinite amount of God/love/quantum field to grow into and to become even beyond this physical realm. It just doesn't work that way. The difference is, though, that the more that you work on yourself and the more that you let go of the non-love and the conditions and the programming, and the more that you harness who you truly are and raise your vibration, the more that you tap into and become and harness more of the universal energies that are out there, and it becomes more available to you. And that's the reason why the synchronicities happen. It's the reason why the accelerations can happen. It's the reason why you're able to be more guided and all of that fun stuff, okay? But along with that is that your resilience will change, and it'll be more and more difficult for the outer reality to impact you in a negative way and to lower your vibration, to pull you back into fear or into the illusion. And if you do, because of your mastery, you'll be able to remove it and transcend it and overcome it quickly, rather than it taking weeks, months, years, decades, as it does and has for the majority of the population for the last X amount of thousands of years. Okay, because everything happens in cycles, and we happen to be at the end of the cycle where there's this mass awakening that's happening. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. Hopefully you got something out of this. Please like, share, comment. If you want to hear more, let me know what you want to hear me talk about. I can talk about anything, literally anything. And help me out, because without you, my videos are not going to get more views. And if you find this information enlightening and helpful to you, and hopefully you find it to be of a high caliber, because I'm really taking things to the highest possible levels. And that's what I teach, right? That's what I help people do. Because why play at the lower levels in the physical 3D realm, which is where the illusion is? It's where everything's the slowest and the hardest, and that's why people have to grind, and that's the reason why people feel like they're in these mouse wheels and they can't get anywhere in their lives, because they're playing in the lower vibrational realms. And you don't need to. Your higher self, your God self, your superconscious self can help you and work with you and intervene on your behalf. And as long as you're engaging with it and know how to engage with it through your meditation practices, you can take things to whatever levels you want and directly influence and impact the world around you tangibly. That's what's so crazy. So thank you. Like, share, comment. If you don't like me, share, comment, like, and tell me why. Thank you.